farm again. Today, congratulations, we are doing part 10. Double digits. Well, not in Roman numerals. Double digits though, part 10. However, it's not an easy part we have to do today, right? Because many things are changing and we all have followed the last part and learned what happened to Snowball, and yeah, surely now things are going to change quite a bit. And I want to talk about that in the beginning already, hoping that then later I will spend less time rambling on about these themes. So right, what are some new themes that are part of Napoleon's rule, right? Napoleon's style of now being the president, because we saw that in the last part. He will preside over these committees, and he would be the chairman, but that's a bit of an understatement. He will be the president of all these committees. So, what are some of the themes in Napoleon's rule, right? And Napoleon, we are reminded, right? That's actually Joseph Stalin, who ruled Russia until the mid-1950s. Threats of violence, easy enough. Napoleon now has 9, attack dogs, right? They are maybe called his bodyguards, but really they are there, they are used to threaten violence on the other animals. There is propaganda in that Napoleon makes claims, no, but Napoleon orders things, announces things, right, and the animals will look more, I don't know about that, and then in the evening or in the afternoon, Squealer gets sent out to explain, and that's propaganda, right? Oh, look, here are all the reasons why the party is right in doing this, even though you don't like it. It's also that, so Squealer is sent out, and not only does he openly lie to the animals, openly lie is a bit of a paradox, right? He lies to the animals, and it's not even very well hidden. He also justifies dishonesty and secrecy. He said, yeah, don't you know? That's tactics. And that's also cunning. I hope that's still be on the screen. Tactics and cunning. So it's a good thing that Napoleon and maybe some of the other pigs lie, and because that's just all part of the tactics we are using. Oh, the other animals don't even know the words. The word tactic, it comes up later. Another part is militarism. Everything is now in a military style, right? Napoleon barks the orders at them in a military style. They still talk about rations. They talk about loyalty and obedience. Obedience is following your rulers, right? Following your leaders. And lots of the things in his style are all about militarism. Maybe that's because that justifies not explaining things, but also because in the actual military history of the farm, being the Battle of the Cowshed, Napoleon didn't do anything. He was there, but he's not even at all mentioned separately in this battle, right? Snowball did all the things that are important in the Battle of the Cowshed, and Napoleon did nothing. At least he's not mentioned. So, pointing at military is maybe a little bit a way to compensate that too, right? That Snowball is remembered also as a military leader. And because Snowball is remembered positively, there's also revising history. Review is to look at it again and say, see, this is not good. Okay, fine, we'll wipe it out and we'll change it. So history is being changed, and the animals are told, that didn't actually happen, or don't you remember that happened? Or don't you remember, all of this was actually Napoleon's idea? You don't seem to know that. Huh. It's a little bit like, well, all of these things are, right? What totalitarian dictatorships do. Totalitarian dictatorships. Yeah, they like their military, right? Because those are all those grand and shiny things that they can put forward, and also that they don't need to explain, right? Loyalty, bravery, obedience, suffering for the group, fighting, of course, right? Yeah, lots of it is going to be obedience. Follow your leaders. Um, and then, yeah, revising history. Surely Russia and China, they were very busy, and they are still very busy doing this kind of thing. There are whole government offices that do nothing but this, right? They look through history and say, oh, see, that's not a thing the party enjoys. Wipe it out, rewrite it, and say, see, um, that's not what happened. And also, yeah, well, everybody does that. History is written by the winners, and so we're doing it because surely everybody does that. Huh. Okay. Yeah, so that's my introduction to this part. You see, it's going to be a bit of a heavy part, and we haven't even gotten to the vocabulary yet. Let's do that now. Napoleon announced that from now on the Sunday morning meetings would come to an end. They were unnecessary, he said, and wasted time. In future, all questions relating to the working of the farm would be settled by a special committee of pigs, presided over by himself. These would meet in private and afterwards communicate their decisions to the others. The animals would still assemble on Sunday morning to salute the flag, sing Beasts of England, and receive their orders for the week. But there would be no more debates. In spite of the shock that Snowball's expulsion had given them, the animals were dismayed by this announcement. Several of them would have protested if they could have found the right arguments. Even Boxer was vaguely troubled. He set his ears back, shook his forelock several times, and tried hard to marshal his thoughts. But in the end, he could not think of anything to say. Some of the pigs themselves, however, were more articulate. 4 young porkers in the front row uttered shrill squeals of disapproval, and all 4 of them sprang to their feet and began speaking at once. But suddenly, the dogs sitting round Napoleon let out deep, menacing growls, and the pigs fell silent and sat down again. Then the sheep broke out into a tremendous bleating of 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, which went on for nearly a quarter of an hour and put an end to any chance of discussion. Oh, it's a longer part. Maybe starting in the back a little bit. So there were 4 pigs, younger pigs, because Napoleon is now the oldest pig, I believe, right? Only Napoleon and Snowball were older pigs, and everyone else is porkers, meaning younger, right? They were meant to be eaten fairly quickly. Napoleon is the oldest pig. 4 younger pigs are articulate enough to have something to say, right? To have arguments and things they want to say. So they jump up and they squeal shrill, right? High and unpleasant. Maybe should have written it. Shrill, high, unpleasant sound. Just small enough so that nobody can read it. But threat of violence, right? The dogs that were pretending to be just Napoleon's bodyguards jump up, well, get up and growl menacingly, threateningly at these four pigs. Threateningly, menacing. And that's that. Then after that, the sheep feel it is now their moment. Maybe they were asked to. Maybe they just do it anyway because they're dumb. Maybe that's just another weapon of Napoleon in his collection. The ignorance of the pigs, right? They bleed 4 legs good, 2 legs bad for 15 minutes. And even a minute of it is already completely meaningless for 15 minutes, and that puts an end to all arguments. So that's at the end. Then there's Boxer. Boxer is such a loyal believer in the system, in animalism, right? Boxer always says, I will work harder and everything will turn out well. But even Boxer is, it says here, vaguely troubled, a little bit troubled. And so he sets his ears back, shakes his hair several times. That means he's trying to concentrate and think really hard. We've seen this before when he is trying to learn to read. So he knows the first 4 letters A, B, C, D of the alphabet, but as soon as he gets to D, he sets his ear back, thinking really hard of what letter would come next, but he can never remember it. And so here too, he's thinking really hard. He's trying to marshal his thoughts. Marshal is like lead, right? Organize maybe into a formation, because a marshal is somebody maybe who leads a group, like an orchestra, or that kind of thing. So he wants to sort his thoughts into a nice line, but he can't. He's too dumb. So he doesn't say anything. And then in the beginning, Napoleon tells them there will be no more Sunday assembly. Well, there will be. There will just be no debates. The debates are wasting time. Instead, all the animals will just receive their orders. The orders will come from a special committee of pigs. And instead, what they'll do, they will salute the flag. They don't have hands, but they will salute the flag. They will sing Beasts of England, and that's it. That's the whole assembly, right? So assemble and assembly I wrote down one more time. And that's that. And the animals don't like that. Many are dismayed. Many would have said something if they had been able to organize their thoughts. 4 pigs did say something, but got threatened by the dogs, and then the sheep shouted everybody down, and that was it. Next part. The meeting was dismissed, everybody left, and everyone left not happy. So, afterwards, Squealer was sent round the farm to explain the new arrangements to the others. Comrades, he said, I trust that every animal here appreciates the sacrifice that Comrade Napoleon has made in taking this extra labor upon himself. Do not imagine, comrades, that leadership is a pleasure. On the contrary, it is a deep and heavy responsibility. No one believes more firmly than Comrade Napoleon that all animals are equal. He would be only too happy to let you make your decisions for yourselves. But sometimes you might make the wrong decisions, comrades. And then, where should we be? Suppose you had decided to follow Snowball with his moonshine of windmills. Snowball, who, as we know, was no better than a criminal. He fought bravely at the Battle of the Cowshed, said somebody. Worry's not enough, said Squealer. Loyalty and obedience are more important. And as to the Battle of the Cowshed, I believe the time will come when we shall find that Snowball's part in it was much exaggerated. Discipline, comrades, iron discipline. That is the watchword for today. One false step, and our enemies would be upon us. Surely, comrades, you do not want Jones back. Oh. Once again, this argument was unanswerable. Certainly, the animals did not want Jones back. If the holding of debates on Sunday morning was liable to bring him back, then the debates must stop. Boxer, who had now had time to think things over, voiced the general feeling by saying, "If Comrade Napoleon says it, it must be right." And from then on he adopted the maxim, "Napoleon is always right," in addition to his private motto of, "I will work harder." Well, might as well say that right now. Napoleon is always right. Is pretty much directly taken from Soviet Russia's maxim, the party is always right. People would say that, well, all the time, at many points, to excuse any criticism that they might voice. They will say, well, I know the party is always right, but also, so shield themselves, right? Saying, oh, look, I'm not criticizing, but also by the defenders of the party, they would say, oh, well, interesting point, comrade. However, you don't seem to understand. The party is always right, so dismissed. Yeah, so the party is always right. The party doesn't make mistakes. The party thinks of everything. So whatever your concern is, you are wrong. The party is always right. End of story. So a lot of this part is all about, you will remember me squealing, this is all about Squealer going around making explanations, right? So that's the propaganda. He's sent out all the time now to explain what everything means in the eyes of the party, in the eyes of the rulers, and why everything is fine. So he says, oh, do not think Napoleon is happy that he's now the president. No, 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 no. The responsibility is such a heavy burden for him. You should be thankful for Napoleon's sacrifice, because, right, he works harder and suffers for your well-being. That's his sacrifice, right? Giving things up that you enjoy. So you should appreciate that. Show respect, right? So, right, don't believe, what is it? Do not imagine, comrades, that leadership is a pleasure. On the contrary, it is deep and heavy responsibility. And nobody believes more strongly that all animals are equal. But if he lets you make your own decisions, you will just make the wrong decisions, and then where will we be? Jones will come back. And imagine you followed Snowball's moonshine. Moonshine is silly talk. Another word like that is pipe dream. Yeah, some pipe dream. Some crazy idea that you might be having, but that could never work. Moonshine. Silly talk of windmills. It would have been disastrous, and you would have followed Snowball, who was no better than a criminal. He doesn't give any evidence for that, but really you can already see he is already revising history, right? Snowball was no better than a criminal. Why? Oh, you'll find out soon enough. Huh, okay. Well, not okay. And then, yeah, these words, the vocabulary, that's all of this militarism again, right? Bravery is nice. Yeah, Snowball was brave. Sure, fine, whatever. But other things are also important. Loyalty and obedience. Loyalty and obedience are very similar, right? That you follow your leaders, stand by your leaders. Obedience comes from obey, the verb, to obey. So follow the things you are told, do the things you're told. Discipline too. Discipline and obedience are similar again, right? That you stick with what you're told. That's discipline, right? If I tell you to walk around this building every 1 hour, then do it, right? If you're tired, well, don't care. You cannot stop. If it rains, don't care. You cannot stop. If someone else comes and says, well, look, this is dumb, can't you just not do it 1 or 2 times? No, you cannot. You have discipline. You have to keep doing it, right? What you think about it doesn't matter because those are your orders. And he says so. Discipline is the watchword. Watchword is another one of those. It's like maxim, right, or motto. Only now this time maybe it's just a single word. Something that shows your beliefs. Right, and that's all. Well, that's almost all. In the end, he also says, well, soon we will find out. Squealer says, soon we might find out that Snowball's achievements in the Battle of the Cowshed were maybe exaggerated. Everyone thinks Snowball is such a hero, but just you wait, you will find out that this was not true, because we already know, right? Squealer and Napoleon and others in the ruling class are strongly working on revising the history of what happened, because they already noticed the other animals don't remember things very well, and they don't write things down. They can't write, right? And that kind of thing. Right, moving on to the next part. These are some changes that happen, but luckily the next thing that happens is the weather turns good again, and so the new year on the farm starts, so everybody's busy with other things at least. By this time the weather had broken and the spring plowing had begun. The shed where Snowball had drawn his plans of the windmill had been shut up, and it was assumed that the plans had been rubbed off the floor. Every Sunday morning at 10 o'clock, the animals assembled in the big barn to receive their orders for the week. The skull of Old Major, now clean of flesh, had been disinterred from the orchard and set up on a stump at the foot of the flagstaff beside the gun. After the hoisting of the flag, the animals were required to file past the skull in a reverent manner before entering the barn. Nowadays, they did not sit all together as they had done in the past. Napoleon, with Squealer and another pig named Minimus, who had a remarkable gift for composing songs and poems, sat on the front of the raised platform with the 9 young dogs forming a semicircle round them, and the other pigs sitting behind. The rest of the animals sat facing them in the main body of the barn. Napoleon read out the orders for the week in a gruff, soldierly style, and after a single singing of Beasts of England, all the animals dispersed. Shorter part. So okay, the spring plowing has begun. That's nice. They have something to do. But also, yeah, more sinister changes, negative changes, right? First of all, the skull, the head of Old Major, now, of course, clean of any flesh, because 2 years have passed already or so. They have dug it up, that's disinter. So the body of Old Major was dug up, the skull was taken, and put on a stump, so a wooden, right, a log, next to the flagstaff and next to the gun. And that's a reference to what the Russians did with the body of Lenin. So Lenin was one of the first leaders of the Russian Revolution, right? It was Lenin and Trotsky. Um, so anyway, Lenin died, and then they had his body preserved and put in a special building, right? And people were required to visit and show their respect, well, to communism, to the party, to all of it, right? A little bit of all of it. Here too, the animals have to file past, so in single file, right? File past the skull of the dead old major, and show their respect in a reverent manner, so in a respectful, solemn manner. To revere is the verb here, right? To revere, it's like respect. Revere. Meanwhile, there's a new seating order. Before, they all sat all together mostly, right? Everyone said however they wanted. In fact, that's a bit of a it's described in great detail in the very beginning of the book, right? That, well, first of all, they must make sure not to step on each other. But apart from that, the horses and the cows, right? They're so big, so they must make sure not to step on each other. But apart from that, they can sit wherever they like, right? Where, for example, Clover also takes care of some ducklings between her legs, because everyone can sit wherever they want. Not now. You'll have Napoleon here in the middle on the platform, the platform that was formerly Old Major's place of rest. And next to him would be Squealer, and then also Minimus. Minimus is new. We have read about him once. However, he's a writer and singer, and yeah, he writes songs and poems. So he's an artist, right? Who's also now part of the ruling circle. And again, it's propaganda, right? Because these artists are only allowed to write things that praise the party. Then all the other pigs sit in the back. They're just, well, support, right? Support characters to Napoleon. Then the 9 dogs are here to protect Napoleon from everybody else who is still allowed to sit wherever they want, because they don't matter. They just sit in the main area of the barn, everybody else together, just listening to their orders. And the orders are delivered by Napoleon in a gruff, soldierly style. You can very much imagining him, right? Just like we have seen in real world military dictatorships. Well, not even military, in real world dictatorships, right? Where the dictator wears a very large hat and a military uniform, maybe, only it's not. It looks like a military uniform, but it's even more embellished, right? With shoulder pads and tassels and more medals and things here and golden buttons and this and that, and maybe you put a tie on it too because you want to look more serious, more intellectual, and then you wear a big hat. It's important to have a big hat if you are a dictator. And so he delivers his orders in a gruff, soldierly style. He barks the orders at them. And yeah, a little bit like the real Stalin did too. Moving on. This is now going to be the last part, and we're also going to reach the end now of chapter 5. And then we'll also still read the first paragraph of chapter 6, just to give you a little bit of an idea what comes next. And this chapter still has a small surprise coming for us, which I'll tell you now. So, only 3 weeks have passed till, I didn't mention this before, right? The book calls it the expulsion of Snowball. Expulsion. That's the noun of to expel. But really, that's a bit of a what is the word? That's really not, that's a bit of a weak description, right? Because expulsion is to make someone leave, right? An official decision to make someone leave. For example, you could get kicked out of school for breaking the rules, right? And then you are expelled from school. But what happened to Snowball is the dogs were really, really close to murdering him. That's not exactly the same as expulsion, now is it? But it's not even that the pigs call it that. The book itself calls it that too. Maybe the book too is lying to us in that way, that this is certainly bad, right, revisionist, his revisionist vocabulary, right? He wasn't just friendlily asked to leave, please, or he was not found out and accused of being a criminal. No, 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 no. They just tried to murder him and he had to escape. And yeah, that also reflects the life of Leon Trotsky, who Snowball is based on, right? He was kicked out of Soviet Russia, and at the beginning he was still treated with some respect in Turkey, right? He lived at the Russian embassy in Turkey for a while, until they decided, nah, we're not doing that anymore. And then he was shoved around to many, many different places and many different countries, and in fact locked up on some island, and then thrown out of there too, and moved to France, and thrown out of France, and invited to Norway, and then kicked out of Norway, and then later he was assassinated in Mexico by, who would you have guessed, the Russians themselves. So that's Leon Trotsky. Yeah, but anyway, I'll continue. On the third Sunday after Snowball's expulsion, the animals were somewhat surprised to hear Napoleon announce that the windmill was to be built after all. He did not give any reason for having changed his mind, but merely warned the animals that this extra task would mean very hard work. It might even be necessary to reduce their rations. The plans, however, had all been prepared down to the last detail. A special committee of pigs had been at work upon them for the past 3 weeks. The building of the windmill, with various other improvements, was expected to take 2 years. That evening, again, Squealer explained privately to the other animals that Napoleon had never, in reality, been opposed to the windmill. On the contrary, it was he who had advocated it in the beginning, and the plan which Snowball had drawn on the floor of the incubator shed had actually been stolen from among Napoleon's papers. The windmill was, in fact, Napoleon's own creation. Why then, asked somebody, had he spoken so strongly against it? Here Squealer looked very sly. That, he said, was Comrade Napoleon's cunning. He had seemed to oppose the windmill simply as a maneuver to get rid of Snowball, who was a dangerous character and a bad influence. Now that Snowball was out of the way, the plan could go forward without his interference. This, said Squealer, was something called tactics. He repeated a number of times, "Tactics, comrades! Tactics, comrades! Tactics!" skipping round and whisking his tail with a merry laugh. The animals were not certain what the word meant, but Squealer spoke so persuasively, and the 3 dogs who happened to be with him growled so threateningly, that they accepted his explanation without further question. There's still one more paragraph, but I'll talk about it already, right? So here we are again, right? Revising history. Did you know, comrades, the windmill was in fact Napoleon's idea. Snowball, who seemed to have come up with all the drawings by himself. No, 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 no. Snowball had stolen that from Napoleon. Oh, and when Napoleon opposed the building of the windmill strongly, oh, don't worry about it. It was only tactics. It was only a maneuver, a tactical movement. That's another military term, right? A tactical movement, like maybe, well, e.g., for example, a formation. It's something that maybe you have to practice. So, right, yeah, how to fight? Well, organize yourselves in little blocks, right? And you go in the front, and you go in the middle, and you go in the back, and then you move together, and That's that would be a maneuver, right? Where we practice that, or yeah, where I tell you all the rules how to do it. So yeah, a tactical movement. It was just a maneuver to get rid of Snowball, who was a bad influence anyway. A dangerous character and a bad influence. Yeah, that's easy enough to say, right? I don't have to explain that really. And yeah, and so Squealer says, see, in a sly, with a sly expression. That's so sly is sneaky, right? And cunning also, tricky. As I wrote here, secretive, but like on your face, right? Sneaky and tricky. He said, see, that was all just tactics. Oh. Napoleon is the candidate, the supporter of food for more food, right? Food means power. But still, he says, maybe the building of the windmill will mean that rations have to be reduced because the work will be so hard. Huh. Don't know, that will probably not turn out very well. So, the windmill will still be built, and Napoleon was for the windmill all this time. You didn't know that? You ask, why is that? He hated the windmill before. Yeah, but he didn't hate the windmill. He only hated that it was Snowball's idea. When he looked at the plan, it was communicated to us in the book. He actually thinks it's a good idea. Only it's not his idea, so that was his problem with it, right? And also, more importantly, maybe, the windmill was a very popular project. The animals all want that, right? All those beautiful things that electricity would bring to them. They are very invested in this idea now. Well, at least they were. They were very invested in this. And so the windmill will be built. And the beginning of chapter 7 also suggests that. That's why I'll tell you now. All that year, the animals worked like slaves, but they were happy in their work. They grudged no effort or sacrifice, well aware that everything that they did was for the benefit of themselves and those of their kind would come after them, and not for a pack of idle, thieving human beings. So, we'll stop here. They work really, really hard, like slaves, it says here. Later it says they work 60 hours a week. But they are happy because they know it's for the benefit of themselves, right? Especially once the miracle of electricity comes around, everyone will have a better life. Themselves and also those who will come after them, so right, their children. And instead they're not working for a pack of idle, lazy, thieving humans. Yeah, humans, those would be bad. Surely everything is much better now that they work for themselves and not for lazy, thieving humans. Right, and that is where we shall stop today. And so, yeah, I feel this has worked out pretty well, right? That I wrote all these themes here first, because then I could always point to them again, right? And I talked a little bit about Stalin, and a little bit about Trotsky, and just a tiny bit about Lenin, whose body was preserved and put in a glass sarcophagus, glass coffin, and people would go and visit the dead Lenin in his special little museum. to revere him, right? To show him respect. Yeah. Okay. And now I'll read the whole part to you one more time, and then that's that. Napoleon announced that from now on the Sunday morning meetings would come to an end. They were unnecessary, he said, and wasted time. In future, all questions relating to the working of the farm would be settled by a special committee of pigs, presided over by himself. These would meet in private and afterwards communicate their decisions to the others. The animals would still assemble on Sunday mornings to salute the flag, sing Beasts of England, and receive their orders for the week, but there would be no more debates. In spite of the shock that Snowball's expulsion had given them, the animals were dismayed by this announcement. Several of them would have protested if they could have found the right arguments. Even Boxer was vaguely troubled. He set his ears back, shook his forelock several times, and tried hard to marshal his thoughts. But in the end he could not think of anything to say. Some of the pigs themselves, however, were more articulate. 4 young porkers in the front row uttered shrill squeals of disapproval, and all 4 of them sprang to their feet and began speaking at once. But suddenly the dogs sitting round Napoleon let out deep menacing growls, and the pigs fell silent and sat down again. Then the sheep broke out into a tremendous bleating of 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, which went on for nearly a quarter of an hour and put an end to any chance of discussion. Afterwards, Squealer was sent round the farm to explain the new arrangements to the others. "Comrades," he said, "I trust that every animal here appreciates the sacrifice that Comrade Napoleon has made in taking this extra labor upon himself. Do not imagine, comrades, that leadership is a pleasure. On the contrary, it is a deep and heavy responsibility. No one believes more firmly than Comrade Napoleon that all animals are equal. He would be only too happy to let you make your decisions for yourselves. But sometimes you might make the wrong decisions, comrades. And then where should we be? Suppose you had decided to follow Snowball with his moonshine of windmills. Snowball, who, as we now know, was no better than a criminal." "He fought bravely at the Battle of the Cowshed," said somebody. "Bravery's not enough," said Squealer. "Loyalty and obedience are more important. And as to the Battle of the Cowshed, I believe the time will come when we shall find that Snowball's part in it was much exaggerated. Discipline, comrades, iron discipline, that is the watchword for today. One false step and our enemies would be upon us. Surely, comrades, you do not want Jones back?" Once again, this argument was unanswerable. Certainly, the animals did not want Jones back. If the holding of debates on Sunday mornings was liable to bring him back, then the debates must stop. Boxer, who had now had time to think things over, voiced the general feeling by saying, "If Comrade Napoleon says it, it must be right." And from then on he adopted the maxim, "Napoleon is always right," in addition to his private motto of, "I will work harder." By this time the weather had broken and the spring plowing had begun. The shed where Snowball had drawn his plans of the windmill had been shut up, and it was assumed that the plans had been rubbed off the floor. Every Sunday morning at 10 o'clock, the animals assembled in the big barn to receive their orders for the week. the skull of old Major, now clean of flesh, had been disinterred from the orchard and set up on a stump at the foot of the flagstaff beside the gun. After the hoisting of the flag, the animals were required to file past the skull in a reverent manner before entering the barn. Nowadays, they did not sit all together as they had done in the past. Napoleon, with Squealer and another pig named Minimus, who had a remarkable gift for composing songs and poems, sat on the front of the raised platform, with the 9 young dogs forming a semicircle round them, and the other pigs sitting behind. The rest of the animals sat facing them in the main body of the barn. Napoleon read out the orders for the week in a gruff, soldierly style, and after a single singing of Beasts of England, all the animals dispersed. On the 3rd Sunday, after Snowball's expulsion, the animals were somewhat surprised to hear Napoleon announce that the windmill was to be built after all. He did not give any reason for having changed his mind, but merely warned the animals that this extra task would mean very hard work. It might even be necessary to reduce their rations. The plans, however, had all been prepared down to the last detail. A special committee of pigs had been at work upon them for the past 3 weeks. The building of the windmill, with various other improvements, was expected to take 2 years. That evening, Squealer explained privately to the other animals that Napoleon had never in reality been opposed to the windmill. On the contrary, it was he who had advocated it in the beginning, and the plan, which Snowball had drawn on the floor of the incubator shed, had actually been stolen from among Napoleon's papers. The windmill was, in fact, Napoleon's own creation. Why then, asked somebody, had he spoken so strongly against it? Here Squealer looked very sly. That, he said, was Comrade Napoleon's cunning. He had seemed to oppose the windmill simply as a maneuver to get rid of Snowball, who was a dangerous character and a bad influence. Now that Snowball was out of the way, the plan could go forward without his interference. This, said Squealer, was something called tactics. He repeated a number of times, "Tactics, comrades, tactics!" skipping round and whisking his tail with a merry laugh. The animals were not certain what the word meant, but Squealer spoke so persuasively, and the 3 dogs who happened to be with him growled so threateningly, that they accepted his explanation without further questions. End of chapter 5. All that year, the animals worked like slaves, but they were happy in their work. They grudged no effort or sacrifice, well aware that everything that they did was for the benefit of themselves and those of their kind who would come after them, and not for a pack of idle, thieving human beings. And that's where I should stop today. It was, I'm sure it's already a long part, but I think we did pretty well with the changes that are happening on the farm, and yeah, everything having turned from bad to worse. But the animals still believe in the windmill, and Boxer has voiced their feelings when he said, well, if Napoleon says so, it must be right, because they still trust in the leadership of Napoleon, because they're not very bright. That's where we should stop today. I hope you found that useful and interesting. Goodbye.